Welcome to Rich Planet TV. I'm Richard D. Hall. Now, as you might know, over the past year and a bit, I've taken time out to work on making myself less dependent on the grid, or the system as I'm going to call it. This is sometimes referred to as self-sufficiency. A lot of people have been asking me about it, so today I've decided to report on what I've been doing. I've been hesitant to report on this because it gives a window into my personal life, but I've decided it's worth reporting on in order to encourage more people to try and detach themselves from the government and corporate system, which is demonstrably being run by criminals. Why would you want to be dependent on a system run by criminals? It's important that large numbers of people opt out of the system so that those numbers can trade with each other and provide a diverse market of food and essential items for living. After this show, I am sure I will get some great ideas back from viewers on how to improve off-grid living, which I can then report on to hopefully benefit everyone. So firstly, why did I decide to attempt this? Well, if you watch my work on the scamdemic, this shows beyond any doubt that we are under a global dictatorship. The appearance of this scamdemic and the blatant evidence that it was all planned in advance. We've got Event 201. This was the New World Order raising its ugly head. And the measures that they implemented across the world were so ubiquitous. 85% of countries just followed all of the ridiculous rules and measures. So those 85% of countries are just in lockstep, right, under one power. And the remaining 15%, some of them have been taken to task over this. So this was a visible demonstration that there is ostensibly an invisible New World Order government in charge, and we cannot trust this system. The level of deceit in this scamdemic has shown that you cannot trust the system, and it's not being run by the government of your own country. So that's why I decided to take these measures in the spring of 2020. Now at that time, three things happened in my life. The first thing that happened to me is I managed to pay off my mortgage on my property. So I'm fully mortgage free now. Shortly after that, my mother died. And then shortly after that, that's when the scamdemic started. That's when lockdown started. And these all had an impact on what I'm going to show you today. Now, all of us, or the vast majority of us, depend on the system I'm going to describe. And by system, I don't just mean your government, I mean corporations as well. Now, let's first spell out what are the needs that this system provides. This is similar to the hierarchy of needs in psychology, where you list the most sought after needs first, your most basic needs. All right, so your most basic needs is for safety, is to protect your life. So you might think that protection is a fundamental need. So that would be your home or your shelter. All right, so I've listed that one first. High up on the hierarchy of needs is water, the need for water. If you don't have water or fluids for a few days, you're going to be in a bad way. So we all need water to survive. The next need that I've listed is food. You couldn't live for many weeks without eating food. The next one I've listed, perhaps not absolutely essential, depending on where you are in the world, I suppose, is energy. And I'm going to look at electricity, gas, and solid fuel. I realise that there are other types of energy generation. Clothing, again, depending on where you are in the world, this could be an essential item. I've now listed communications, which clearly we're getting into less essential items here, but you'd be forgiven for thinking that communication is essential in this day and age, the way that people are addicted to the internet and addicted to their phones. We then have employment. So the system gives you employment and in return for that, you give the system your labour. And then we have money, which is a complicated one. I've covered that a lot in the past on Rich Planet. I'm going to go through these needs and comment on each one of them and show what I've attempted in order to free myself from the system, the criminal system, which is providing those needs. Now, this is merely what I've attempted, all right? It's work in progress. It's how I've muddled my way through it with limited resources and the limited knowledge that I have, all right? So I'm not saying that any of what I'm doing is necessary, or there will definitely be shortages or inflation or recession or financial collapse. I am saying that we cannot trust this system that's providing our needs because it's run by criminals and the level of uncertainty about the system is through the roof. Anything is possible. They could do anything to us at this point. That's why we have to abstain from this system. I'm not saying that this is the right thing to do. It was what felt right for me to do. I'm not saying everyone should copy this. Perhaps you might like to take some of my ideas and use them in your own project. Add your own ideas, which will perhaps benefit you and your family. Now, at the start, back in the spring of 2020, my motives for doing this were about protecting myself against an engineered financial collapse. But now, although I still think the engineered financial collapse will happen, it's more about protecting against the new monetary system and social control system that is being planned, along with the removal of cash from the economy. If you don't know what I'm talking about, please wake up and watch previous Rich Planet shows number 286, 287 and 288. Now, some people who go off-grid, they do it in an absolute way. So they will find somewhere in the middle of nowhere and they will use what's around them to try and build a hut and then start using the local resources. Now, and you'll find people who've done that. Now, for me, that was too much of a hurdle. I'm 53 years old and I chose to do it with my own property, as I'm going to show you. To me, building my own property in the middle of nowhere, that was way beyond my scope and capability, right? So I've decided to focus on my own property. So that's what this project is about. How do I turn my own property into something which is going to help me get off the grid and get detached from the system? So let's now look at each need in turn and see whether we can meet those needs without the system. So we start with the home or the shelter. This is a very difficult issue because of the whole subject of home ownership is a political hot potato. Quite simply, if you don't have home ownership, then you are dependent on the system. So if you're paying rent, you're paying rent to the system. If you've got a mortgage, you're paying mortgage to a financial institution, which is part of the system. Now, most of what I'm going to describe is achievable if you've got your own home. You'd struggle to do what I'm going to show you if you're living in a rented property, unless you've got a very lenient landlord. Now, a side note here, I'm not advocating the current debt-based monetary system and usury. I'm against usury and hence I'm against interest-based mortgages. The monetary system could be redesigned so that you can purchase a house without paying any interest. So merely by accepting a mortgage, you are engaging in a rigged system. You're tying yourself to the system in order to free yourself in 25 years' time. That's why building your own property is a better solution, but let's continue down the path of doing it the usual way. Now, there are approximately 29 million homes in the UK. 37% of those are fully paid for, right? So they're disconnected from the system. 28% are owned but have mortgages, and 34% are in the rented sector. We could also look at this graph and see that most people who do own their homes outright are over the hill. So the time in most people's lives when they've got the energy to carry out a self-sufficiency project with their home is when they're living in rented housing. So that's a problem. So just over a third of the population would struggle to implement what I'm going to talk about today because they're in the rented sector, unless, as I said, you've got a lenient landlord. Now, there are a lot of property programs on TV about buying and developing homes. They are designed to encourage people to take on as much debt as possible. What they do is fuel people's greed and desires. They never focus on what is realistically achievable to the average person. They always feature properties which are outside the reach of most people, usually £200,000 upwards. They are disgusting and they are not helpful at all. They are there to psychologically make you want more and make you take on debt. Now, it wasn't an easy journey for me to get to the point where I'm at now. I did it on a fairly low budget. So I think my own journey in terms of the financial burden might be very useful for people to look at who want to own a property but are still living in rented property. I'm going to go through some of my own figures to illustrate that you don't need to earn a lot of money to be able to get your own property. And the last place you want to be getting advice from is your television set. I'm going to give some approximate figures and dates here from my own struggle. I'm going to start in 2007. I bought a property in Gateshead. I believe I paid, I think it was 94,000, and I had a mortgage of 75,000, which was interest only. In 2007, it was much easier to get a mortgage. So I paid that mortgage for 8 years without paying off any capital, just interest. Now in 2015, I decided to relocate to South Wales. I sold the Gateshead property for £87,000 and paid the interest-only mortgage off in full. I didn't try and transfer that mortgage to another property. So that left me with £12,000. I also had £12,000 in savings that I had saved over the previous 10 years. So I came to Wales with £24,000 in my hand for a deposit for a house. And my average net earning over the previous 3 years, which is what they base their mortgage decisions on, was only £7,500 a year. Most lenders will loan you 4 times your salary, which would only be £30,000 in my case. This means I needed to get a property for under £54,000. Now, a note here about tax credits. If you're on tax credits, they do add the tax credits to your net annual earning when they're considering giving you a mortgage. So your income that the bank would consider might be higher than you think. Now, I put a number of offers in on properties for sale in Merthyr Tydfil. One of them was this one. It had been on the market for over £70,000 and had been reduced, I think, to somewhere in the mid-60s. It was 60-odd thousand pounds. I put an offer in for £40,000, which was rejected. So I upped the offer to £52,000, which was accepted. I then had to apply for a £28,000 mortgage, which was rejected. It was rejected because my credit rating had been affected by a £20 unpaid mobile phone bill from 2006. Cut a long story short, I wasn't actually liable for that bill because I had cancelled the contract at the end of the term, but the phone company renewed the contract by mistake. Despite this, in order to get the mortgage, I had to contact O2, pay the £20 bill from over 9 years ago. Then once this had been done, eventually, and it took some time, I was offered a £28,000 mortgage over a 20-year term. And bear in mind that I was 47 years old at the time. The interest rate was 2.75% fixed for 5 years. So there you go. It is possible to get a property if you're on a low income. I've put that information out to show this, right? That it is possible. If you've not got any savings and want to buy a property, you need to be disciplined and get a deposit together, right? You have to learn how to become a miser. I'm a pretty good miser. and I do know a few who are much better misers than I am. The house I bought was an old 3-story property with a large kitchen in the basement, 2 reception rooms and 3 bedrooms. It had many issues that needed sorting out. 3 of the wooden lintels above the windows were completely rotten and needed replacing with concrete ones. So this tree is actually growing out of the side of the house. You can see it there. So we need to get rid of that. I replaced the floorboards. A large part of the roof needed refitting. Once I'd moved in 2015, every year after that in the spring, I spent about 6 weeks working on different aspects of the property. Financially, my aim was to try and pay the £28,000 mortgage off in 5 years by making overpayments. Between 2015 and 2020, my average annual earning went up to just over £10,000 a year. And out of this, I was able to make £3,000 or £4,000 in overpayments to the mortgage each year. I achieved the goal, and in the spring of 2020, I paid off the mortgage in full. Not long after this, my mother died, and some months later, I was left some of her estate in an inheritance. So I was able to carry out further improvements, as you will see in the video. I hope this has inspired those who are frustrated with renting and shown that it is possible to find a way to get your own property. Let's come on to the next need that the system provides, which is water. Okay, I'm in the living room, and this is on the middle level of the property, the middle level of 3 levels, and below me is the kitchen. Now, if you want to provide your own water, the most obvious place to get it from is from the roof when it rains. And I thought that because my kitchen's on the lowest level, it might be easy to capture the water on the middle level and feed it through down into the kitchen. So on the side of the living room here is a small side patio which has a drain pipe on it. I'm standing on the side patio. This is a shared area with my neighbour's property, and so this drain pipe here collects water from the roof, and as you can see, I've fitted a diverter. So what this does is water which comes vertically downwards, it will divert it through this pipe into the water butt, which is just a container, 250 litres I think this is, and then when the water butt gets full with rainwater, the water just then diverts over the filter, goes round the filter, and it goes down the drain. So there is a little mesh filter in here where you will get gunge and moss and what have you just gathers there, so that doesn't actually go into the water. It's not it's only the larger particles that this mesh will stop, but it keeps the water reasonably clean, right? And what you find is that when the tank is full, over time any dirt that's in the water will just settle at the bottom, right? So every now and again you can clean that out. I haven't had to clean it out yet, and it's been here for quite some months. And in order to try and keep the temperature down in summer months, I've painted it white, which helps just keep the temperature. You put your hand on there, it's summer now, it's pretty cold. Because I have been warned that if the temperature gets up beyond a certain level, you can have a problem with Legionnaire's disease, apparently. I haven't had any problems yet. So at the bottom of the water butt, this is MDPE piping. I've drilled a hole in there, fitted the MDP piping. It's quite easy to put together, and then there's a valve so you can isolate this from the house if you want, from outside, just in case there's any issues. If there was a flood or whatever, I'd be able to turn that blue tap off and then no water would come in. After the blue tap, there's a coupler which converts this plastic MDPE piping into copper. I think it's 1-inch pipe. And then there's a little filter there which you can change the mesh in. So there's a mesh that the water goes through, which will stop some of the larger particles before they go into the house. Where you put this determines how long the pipe's got to be, and you need to put this higher than wherever the level is that you're going to extract the water from. So this was the best place that I judged for the water butt, which did mean there's going to be quite a long pipe to reach the kitchen sink. I'll show you that in a minute. And I had to get it through this wall. You can see there the copper pipe just going into the wall there, and it took us quite some time to drill through this wall. It's about 3 feet thick. We were on for quite a while, and as you can see, I've got insulation on there. That's to stop the water freezing in winter. So obviously with this system, because the tank is only just a little bit higher than the kitchen, you haven't got a lot of pressure pushing the water through the pipe. So I've added this stand here, which gives you an extra foot of height. It just gives it that little bit extra push to get the water through. Because obviously mains water pressure is much higher than something like this. So just have a look inside now, and the lid comes off quite easy, keeps any bugs out or what have you. You take it out. You give us a tenner, I'd drink that. I think it'd be all right. So we got a few 100 litres in there. As it's raining outside, I'll just show the water coming into the water butt. In comes the water. Hooray! So this is the living room, and I'll just pan across and notice there's no television in this living room. If you value your health, I recommend you do not have a television in your living room. Alright, so let's just zoom in. This is where the pipe comes through the wall. That's a copper pipe that I've just painted white, and you can see it just runs along the side wall below the radiator, and it goes down through into the kitchen. So I just drilled a hole in the ceiling through above where the kitchen sink was going to go, because I've rebuilt the kitchen as well. If you're wondering what this picture is, it's a landscape, and I've added a TR-3B on there, which is a secret spacecraft. There's a magnet on the other side of it, and you can move it about. So I've ripped out the old kitchen and I rebuilt it from scratch. I'm quite good at carpentry and I'm quite good at electrics. I wired all the sockets in here, I did the lighting, and I built all the benches myself. The one thing I don't like doing is plumbing. I've got a very good plumber, Brian, who has done the plumbing in the kitchen and in the other places. So I'm standing underneath the living room where I showed you the pipe was going into the floor. And that pipe comes through here, and then it splits off into two. All right, one of them goes inside the wall, and it feeds the cold tap, and then the other one goes into this oversint water heater. It's a gravity fed water heater. You need to get a gravity fed one if you're going to do it like this, not a mains fed one. So that goes through the water heater, and then that comes out at the hot tap. Right. There are two normal taps on this sink, so I've got 4 taps going into this sink. This is just as it would be in a normal house. So the hot on this tap is coming from a combi boiler, and the cold tap is just coming from the water mains. With these 2 taps, the cold tap is coming just directly from the water butt, and the hot tap is coming from the water butt, but it's fed through the water heater. And if you wanted to heat up, you just switch it on. This light comes on, and when that light goes off, it means that the water is hot, and you can control the temperature that the light goes off at as well, or that it switches off at the thermostat. And then you've got 7.5 litres of hot water in about 10 minutes, which is enough to wash the dishes. If you needed more water, you would just leave it switched on, the light goes out, you fill the sink, and then just keep filling the sink. So you could wash clothes in this sink. That's why I've installed such a big sink, because if the mains water was to be lost, you wouldn't then have use of your washing machine, because that's fed by the water mains. But you could use the water from the water butt, heated through this water heater, to wash clothes in here. Right, so the red light's gone out on the water heater, which means that the water's ready to come out of the hot tap. Let me just Switch that on. And that's too hot to touch there now, right? So I would need to add some cold water in there. So that's hot and cold coming from the water butt. You see that the hot's running a little bit slower, but it's going through there. That's still hot there. Still running hot. Right, it's starting to go warm there now. Okay, so we've got about a quarter of a sink of hot water, which, as I said, that's enough to do dishes in. Okay, so let's have a look at this water. So that's it from the water butt, right? It's fairly clear. Now I don't drink this, and I think the regulations say that I should have these taps labelled saying non-potable water or don't drink, and the pipes as well. That's a job I've got on my list of things to do. So how do we make this water suitable for drinking? Well, this is how I've been doing it. I've been filling this kettle. Put the kettle on the log burner stove, so I boil the water and then I let the water cool and I put it into a water filter. I've been drinking this water for months now and I'm still here. I've given it to other people and they say that it's less harsh than tap water. So just get a normal glass of tap water and a glass from the roof which has been boiled and filtered, and it has a much less harsh taste. When Brian the plumber was working here, I would always make him a cup of coffee, and he got quite paranoid that I was using water from the roof for his coffee. I did make him one cup that he drank that was made from the roof, but don't tell him that. With him being a plumber, he's obviously up to speed on a lot of the regulations and the reasons why the regulations are there to protect against Legionnaire's disease and all this sort of thing, but I haven't had Legionnaire's disease yet. The other advantage is this hasn't had anything added to it. Obviously there's no fluoride in there. This filter is a heavy metal filter, so it will filter out the smallest particles. So we've got drinking water and we've got water for doing dishes and cooking. You could use that kitchen sink to wash clothes in using the water heater to heat the water, so you don't necessarily need a washing machine. Now what about going to the toilet? So I'm back here on the middle level, and when I got the house there was a wall going along here, and I pulled that wall down and there was actually a really decrepit old shower unit in here, so I pulled all that out and I made it into a downstairs toilet. All right. Now when I did this, I felt the wall just to the right of the toilet and I could feel it was hollow, so I put my hammer through it and there's a big cavity in there, enough space to build a big cupboard, right? So I built the toilet and I built a big cupboard, so that's been a cupboard for the last 5 years. So I thought, well, I could put a water tank in there, because if you're going to use the rainwater to go to the toilet, you need a tank, a large tank, to store the water that you're going to collect from the roof. Now that tank has got to sit higher than your toilet in order for the water to go from the tank into your cistern. So the obvious place for this was the toilet on the middle level, and to fit the tank just above the toilet, and then to find a drain pipe that I could connect to outside of the toilet. Voila, my toilet. And you'll notice a framed letter above the toilet, which is a personally signed letter from David Cameron. You may remember many years ago I challenged David Cameron on the subject of UFOs and UFO secrecy. I wrote to him and he wrote back, so I thought the most appropriate place for a letter from David Cameron was in the bog. So here I am, and obviously this is where I do all my most critical thinking, and this is the cupboard here that I built 5 years ago, which we see now has a big tank in it. So I built this wooden frame to house this. Well, I think it's a 105 litre tank, so when that's full of water you're talking over 100 kilos, which is bigger than a large person. So it needed to be quite a strong frame to carry it. 105 litre tank, you can see it's nearly full of water there. So this is the same MDPE pipe as I've used for the water butt. So that I'll just film up here. It goes up there. So I did this plumbing, Brian didn't do this bit. I'm okay with the MDPE stuff, and that goes out of the building and then it joins onto another drain pipe, a different one, right? So you can see there I've put a little valve in just in case we have any problems and I need to cut it off. So when it rains, the water just comes into this tank via this pipe. Now it took me quite a few months to get this right, because at first I didn't fit a valve inside the tank, which was what's called a float valve. It's used in farming for filling up like cattle drinking troughs and things like that. So I thought that as long as this lid here was watertight, just put that lid on there, that the water would fill in and then the pipe would fill up when the tank fills up, just as it does with the normal water butt. But one thing that was happening is I was getting airlocks in this pipe and the water wasn't coming in, right? So that's why I installed this valve. What this valve does is, as the water comes in, it lets the air out of the tank, right? And then when the tank fills up, the water pushes up there and it closes the valve. So it lets air out but not water, which was working okay, but I couldn't get this lid to stop leaking. So whenever it was full, it would leak. So I decided, as Brian recommended in the first place, and I should have just listened to him, there's actually a float valve in there, which when the water gets to this height, it just shuts off the water coming in. You're not getting as much water in there now. It's not filling it right to the top, but at least it's a bit more safe. Brian plumbed the bottom part of it in, which I'll just show you, right? So obviously you're going to get some dirt in the water there. So what he's done is he plumbed a valve in there, and this is a filter. So if you switch this off, you can take that off with a spanner and just clean the mesh filter out. So it means that you're getting reasonably clean water coming into the toilet, right? So that's plumbed into the bottom of the tank, right? So that pipe then comes into, well, there's a couple of valves down here now that Brian's put in. So there's one valve turns the tank on and off, and the other valve turns the mains on and off. So the way I've got it configured at the moment, the mains is on and the tank is off. So if I flush the toilet now, right, the cistern will fill up really quickly because it's filling from mains water. It's got mains water pressure. You can hear it filling there now. Just let that fill. So what I'm going to do is I'm first going to turn the mains water off to the toilet, which is this valve here. Just turn that through 90 degrees. And then this connects the tank water to the toilet. Right, so if I now flush the toilet, right, that now is filling up from the tank. Okay, so there we are, the toilet flushing using rainwater, and in the tank I've got probably about 85 litres of water in there, which at 4 litres a flush is over 20 flushes. Now if you're economic with your toilet use, and by that I mean you only flush when you've had a number 2 and you just don't bother with a number 1, you could get away with 1 flush a day, right? So that's going to last you 3 weeks, right? The water in here could last 3 weeks. Now it's fairly rare in Wales for it to go for 3 weeks without it raining. It did earlier this year. We had about a month without rain, right? Now in that situation, you could always just get a bucket of water, take water out of the other water butt, and just flush the toilet by pouring water down it, right? So with what I've put in place here, it's possible for your whole toilet use to be run purely by rainwater, so you're off the grid. Now there are other ways of getting water other than collecting it from your roof. I'm stood here next to a spring which is not far from Merthyr Tydfil, and I have used this spring in the past to get drinking water from. I'll write the address down next, is it? There we are. Yeah, I'm just filming the spring.
Yeah? So where the bottom of Torring Hill?
Not far from Domino's.
Right. The Bailey side or the other side?
The Bailey side.
There's some shit houses, but there you don't look as if you live in a shit house.
Well, it was a shit house. It's not so shit now.
The big one with the windows on the side.
Windows on the side.
With the alley going down.
That's the one.
Where did you live before there?
County Durham. In England.
Oh, that's it.
Don't ask him where.
He's English.
That's why you're not getting
Are
much
you
sense.
English?
I'm English.
That's why you're not getting a proper bloody answer.
That's why.
County Durham, mind you, not so bad up north.
Yeah.
A lot different down. Are you from up north?
Yeah.
What made you come to Merthyr? Yeah, because that house is looking a lot better than it was.
Yeah.
Because it's a stupid big house.
Oh yeah, it's a big house, yeah.
But it's a stupid bloody spot. I don't know. Then
Well-
again, it's a stupid looking. Careful, you! Yeah, there you got me again. Look, smiley.
The other thing I've been using this water for is to water the vegetables, which I'll come on to when we come on to food. So I can use this water for cooking, I can drink it once it's been filtered, I can use it to wash the dishes, I can use it to wash clothes. Now the other question which arises is bathing. What about actually cleaning yourself? Well, obviously my shower and my bath are connected to the mains water. This is one of the areas that I haven't covered very well. I suppose at a last resort you could get a sponge and just stand in front of the sink and wash yourself that way.
You could always take a dip in your local river.
I'm going to cover energy next, and we'll come back to food a bit later. So let's come on to energy. I'm standing here in the hallway next to the front door, and just above here in this box here that you can't see, that's my consumer unit, which was here when I bought the property. Now this property in terms of energy is supplied by electric and gas, so let's cover the electric first. Now I don't think it's practical in today's world to live without electricity. I think we all want electric to run all of our devices, etc. So in order to be self-sufficient with energy, I think it's useful to have your own electric generation, right? So I've gone for solar power, probably the most common way of generating your own electricity at this time. Now I decided to go for quite a bulky system. Now this is by far the most expensive thing that I've spent my money on with regards to this project. This was £15,500, all right, but you'll see that the system is pretty state of the art. Now I have gone for a Tesla system. I looked at the market, and from what I could see, this was by far the best system. The panels are not Tesla panels, solar panels, but the battery, which is here, and the gateway, they're both Tesla. Left a sour taste in my mouth because, as you may know, I do not like Elon Musk, but from what I could see, that was the best system. I've got quite a lot of roof space here. I've had 21 solar panels fitted. So there's 10 face west, and I've got 7 facing east and a further 4 facing south. Now each of those panels is capable of generating 320 watts of electricity at its maximum. Now just to put that in perspective, if I'm not running any large devices in the house, no washing machine or kettles, etc., it's just running in its normal computers, lights, fridge, etc., you're looking at about 300 watts. So in theory, you could supply the whole house on one solar panel if it's just not running any large devices. But I've got 21 panels, right? So that the maximum capacity of that system is 320 times 21 is 6.7 kilowatts, which is way above anything that I would use in the house. Now, you don't get that maximum capacity because the sun is not always optimally placed for each of the panels at any one time. But I have had 5 kilowatts coming from the panels on a nice sunny day. So how does the system work? Well, the clever bit is this box of tricks here, which is called the gateway. And what that's doing is controlling the electrical power flow to and from 4 different things. So that's the electricity grid, the solar panels, the battery, and the house. All right, so you have a flow of power which is varying all the time between those 4 things. Obviously, the battery, the power flows into the battery when it's being charged and out of the battery at night when the house is running off the battery. The solar panels, obviously, that's a one direction flow of power, and that will flow through the gateway, and it will power the house. If there's enough energy left over, it will charge the battery, and then if there's enough energy left over after that, it will put that out into the grid. Now this battery is rated at 14 kilowatt hours. That means it'll run for 14 hours and pump out a kilowatt of power for 14 full hours, which is more than enough to keep your house powered overnight when there's no sun. If you're conservative with your energy use, you might get 2 days use out of this battery. So that's the principle of this system, that your house will be powered by the solar panels during the day. There'll be enough power in the battery then to keep you going overnight, and then when it comes to the next day, the battery starts charging again. So you're completely off the grid. I've had this system installed since September last year, and the amount of grid energy that I've used is absolutely minimal. Only in December and January was I using energy from the grid. So this has reduced my electric bill to almost zero. Now this system also heats my water, right? So I've installed an immersion heater in the loft, and when there's excess energy from the solar power system, which there usually is, that then heats the water. So it means that the water is no longer being heated by gas. So that then saves on the gas bill. So if you lose the electricity supply to your house, this system will keep you powered off grid. You might have a problem in some of the winter months in December or January when there's less sun. Now I've thought about that, and so I've actually installed some additional wiring. So the switch on the right there, what that does is it disconnects the house's consumer unit from the grid, and then the grid includes the solar panels and the Tesla system, right? So the house is completely disconnected from everything, and then you throw the switch again, and it's connecting the house to these cables that I've installed, right? And I've run these cables So they will carry about 40 amps, right? I've wired them to an outside input socket, right? So you could potentially connect an electric generator and run the house off a diesel or a petrol generator situated outside. So I've installed all of the wiring to be able to do that. I haven't bought an electric generator yet. You can get them for about 700 quid for about 7.5 kilowatt generator, all right? And so you would need to store either diesel or petrol, right? So the idea would be, if you're in a winter month and you've got no sunshine for some days, the Tesla system wouldn't be able to cope with that. So you would just, let's say midday, you'd switch it to the generator. So you'd run the house in the afternoon on the generator, you'd do your washing, do anything that uses a lot of electrical power, maybe even heat the house a bit. And during that time, the battery would charge up, because the solar panels would not be supplying anything other than the battery, right? So when the sun then goes in, you switch your generator off, and then you should hopefully then have enough power in the battery to get you through the night. So with this system, you can be completely off-grid. So what about selling energy back to the grid? Because my system, especially in these summer months, it is generating excess energy, which is just going straight out to the grid that the electric company are selling to other people. Now, the one thing that knocks me about that is generally the rate that you'll get for each unit of electricity is about 1/3 of what they would normally charge you, 1/3, right? So that's pretty paltry. And if you calculate the total amount of revenue that it would generate, right, you're not talking a lot of money per annum, right? With it being 1/3 of the price that you buy the electricity. And the other thing that the electricity company told me, that I would have to have a smart meter put in if I wanted to do that. So I've just opted not to sell my excess energy back to the grid. I don't really want to have anything to do with them. I could, if I wanted to, just isolate the grid from the house, and I'm sure I would be okay, right, without any connection to the grid. Now, because the system does work in that mode. Now, when I had the system installed, the electricity meter was an old electricity meter, and the guys who installed the solar panel system and the battery and the gateway, they didn't bother to replace the electric meter. Now this was an old electric meter with a dial, and when energy was being exported, it was actually running backwards, right? So I was exporting more energy than I was using from the grid. So I was getting my electricity readings was going down, all right? So now a lot of people said to me, oh, well, just don't tell the electric company, but I'm not like that. So I told them, and so they wanted to install a smart meter. And I said, no way you're installing a smart meter in this house, right? So that argument went on for quite some time. The person I was dealing with was convinced that it was compulsory for me to have a smart meter. I said, no, it's not. I don't have to have a smart meter. You need to source a digital meter, which is not a smart meter, right, which will measure the incoming electricity correctly, right? So this argument went on for ages. So the reason why I'm against the smart meter is that it's collecting a hell of a lot of information about your personal life and your personal activities, which I don't think is necessary. All the energy company needs to know is how much energy you've used, and then you pay for that. They don't need to know when you're using it or how you're using it or whatever else. Yeah, so they first started saying that, yeah, they would put a smart meter in the property, right, but they would switch it into a non-smart meter mode. I said, no, I don't want that. I don't want any smart technology in my house. You need to supply a non-smart meter. So eventually they agreed to install a non-smart meter, a digital non-smart meter. And when the guy came to the door, I asked to see it first before I let him in the house. So this is the new digital non-smart meter that he's installed. This is the power coming in from the grid through the meter. He's also installed a nice isolation switch, which is good, and the power then goes down into the gateway. The solar power from the panels is DC, but there's an inverter in the loft, so there's a box of electronics in the loft which converts it to 240 AC, which comes in here, and that goes down into the gateway as well. Obviously the battery's connected to the gateway, and then the gateway then feeds the consumer unit. but I've also, as I said, I've installed this switch which can isolate everything from the consumer unit, so I can provide my own power to the house from a generator outside. So here in the basement, it consists of a very large kitchen, which kind of doubles as a living room. And as you can see, it has this hearth with a log burner. And one of the modifications I've had made to the house by the builders is to have this, the chimney breast knocked all the way through into the other room. Just go and take a look at that. So there's a little room which joins onto the kitchen, which I've converted into a utility room. We just come around here, we'll see that the log burner has two doors, one for each room. So this log burner heats the kitchen and this utility room quite easily. Now the reason why I've done that is because, let's just say I wanted to stop using gas for my central heating. I could live down here, because we have kitchen, living area, utility room, and we can convert this room into a bedroom. So what you could do is only heat the basement and live in the basement and switch the gas off altogether, and in the winter just allow the top two floors to go cold. So if you're sleeping down in the basement without any central heating, how are you going to control the temperature? Well, this log burner has a night mode, so what you can do is get it powered up, get it filled full of fuel, and then if you just push that in and push the other one all the way to the left, that will give a very slow burn, right? So it will still be lit in the morning. It's going to cool down a little bit, but that's what you want when you go to bed anyway. You get up in the morning and then you just fire it up again with more logs. So this is where I keep all of the fuel for the log burner. So we've got coal and logs. The coal I get from a local merchant in 25 kilo bags, and they're £7.50 each. The wood I source all myself. You can get wood if you know where to look for it and you know who to ask. You can get wood free. As you can see, I'm a bit low on wood, so I'm going to go and find some today and chop it up later on, so hopefully this will be full by the end of today. There are lots of places where you can get free wood. There's internet websites, I think Free Cycle is one, and there's Facebook groups where people are just throwing stuff out. One thing I've had a lot of is people who are getting rid of their decking, so wooden decking that has maybe been put in 10 years ago, they're getting rid of it. The builders that I had in doing work on my house, since they finished the job, they know that I've got a log burner, and whenever they have a job where they want rid of a load of wood, they just dump it in the side alley here, because they know that I'll chop it up and use it on my log burner. So I've probably had 4 big lots of wood from the builders. When you're just driving around the town, like a few weeks ago, there were some roofers who were working on a roof 3 doors down, and they had a skip and it was full of the roofing battens. So I just said to the roofers, look, do you need that wood? He said, oh, do you want it? I said, yeah. He says, oh, I'll take it out the skip for you. Where do you want me to put it? Right? And then he gave me a free bag of nails for taking his wood off him. So you're driving around, you just keep your eye out for wood. Like if someone's taking a porch down, or I mean, if you get wood from inside a house, like floorboards or walls or whatever, it's ideal because it's dry as sticks. I built this log bin about a year after I got the house, so it's been here for 5 years and it's still really sturdy. You can buy them at B&Q, but it's more fun making one. Also made this frame for cutting the logs. I got a photograph off the internet and just copied the design of it. Just screwed it together, so it's really helpful this if you're cutting the logs by hand. So the place where I'm going to today, it's out in the Brecon Beacons, Paul told me about this. Paul is a chap who I sometimes drink with in the pub. He's well up on all things to do with logs and chainsaws. So he said, oh, there's a huge area, it's like a football pitch, just with wood lying there. Now this wood, it's been there for over a year, and I drove past it the other day and it's still there. So I'm going to go and help myself now and then chop it up, and hopefully this log bin will be full, within a few hours time. You might think that in order to do this sort of thing you have to live out in the sticks, out in the country. Well, that's not true, because I live in a big town, Merthyr Tydfil. There's Domino Pizzas. I live about 1 minute walk from a huge Tesco. Got my own little vegetable patch, and Tesco is like a minute walk. So this is the place that Paul told me about, bigger than a football pitch, I'd say, and there's just dead wood lying around all over the place, and as I said, it's been here for over a year. So I've got my saw, I'm just going to start, well, chopping it up into bits that'll fit into the truck. Okay, that didn't take long, and there's plenty of other places like this where you can come and get free wood. It's amazing to think that people go into Tesco's and they get a tiny little bag of wood like that and they pay £5 for it, when it's just lying around all over the place. So I'm going to saw these logs now into manageable pieces. Yeah, I think if I was using the log burner considerably more and I was chopping more wood, I would get myself a chainsaw. I did have one, but I got rid of it. I didn't trust myself with it. But my friend Paul, he's got one. It's one hand. So you can hold the wood with one hand and then cut it with the other, right? It's like a mini chainsaw. He would get through this in a couple of minutes, like. But it's a good workout. One little accident with a chainsaw, you've got to be really careful using them. Right, so I've now got all the wood in the log bin. Some of it isn't fully cut yet. These pieces here, which I'll cut on another day, and these pieces are cut to size, ready for the log burner. Gone in there now. What about cooking off-grid? Well, as I've explained, everything electrical in the house is free. I'm generating my own power, so that is off-grid. The microwave, the fridge, the toaster, the kettle, and also the electric oven. There's also an electric grill in there, so all of that is off-grid. The only thing that is not off-grid is this gas hob. Now I could quite easily replace this gas hob with an electric one, right? But I prefer cooking with gas, but it's non-essential. I've also got the log burner where I can boil vegetables and boil eggs. I wouldn't want to fry on there, but I've also got the option of going out onto the patio and starting the barbecue up, so we can grill and fry stuff on that. When I bought the house, this alleyway was in a really bad way. It was completely overgrown. The bushes were as high as this roof right the way along the alleyway. So I removed all of that, and I removed quite a lot of earth in doing that as well. So I've got a photograph here of what it looked like after I'd tidied it up. Okay, so we can do a comparison now. And just last year I started sort of landscaping it, really making use of it. Now my property ends where this drain pipe is, and this wall which runs along the alleyway was in very bad shape. There was no cement in it, all the mortar was rotten, there was a lot of weeds and undergrowth just growing right out of it. so the structure of that wall was being compromised by everything that was growing through it. So it took me about 3 weeks, and I cemented the entire wall. It's not my wall, I don't know who owns it, but in order to tidy up this area, I needed to get the cement in this wall. Now, the main building work I had done last year on the property was to have this opening made. So this was a solid wall, and as you can see, I've got patio doors in there. And what that's done is given me access to the back alley, and I've converted the back alley into a small allotment, and I'm growing vegetables there now. I also built a concrete patio outside here, and I've covered it with fake grass. So it's a nice little area to sit. There's a bit of a sun trap there. In order to brighten the place up, I've painted a mural along my neighbour's wall here, which is a row of Welsh cottages. And on the end, I've put a Newcastle pub, or a Gateshead pub. It's the Central Bar. Some viewers might know it. I used to drink there now and again. A really old-fashioned Gateshead pub, and I've added the Newcastle Brewery's blue star on there just to remind me of home, and also to remind me what it's like to be in a pub. I built this little shed for my son who is 6, so he calls it his base. Now the roof here, there's a pub a few doors up, and it was refurbishing the men's toilets, and they were ripping out the walls for the toilets. So the roof is actually made from the panelling in the gents' toilets that was taken out of the pub. When I got the property, I boarded out half of the loft and put carpet in it. This half is unboarded. Now, I've got rats in this loft, and I've been trying to get rid of them. At first, I just put some traps out. I caught 6 rats. But obviously, that's not going to solve the problem. So what I did was I put a camera up here to find out where they're coming in. And I managed to find their entrance point. I blocked that with wire wool and cement. That stopped them coming in that entrance point. Then there was another entrance point which was just below or connected to that point, so I blocked that one. That cleared it for about a week, and then they were coming in from the other side then. So I've got a camera on that place where they're coming in. I still haven't worked out where the hole is where they're coming in. So I keep moving the camera around so I can see when they come in, and there's alarm goes off in my office, so I've got a motion sensor on it. So their days are numbered. I've just got to keep going like this and blocking off all the different holes. I've been in my neighbour's loft because it's connected, and I've blocked a hole up in his loft as well. But I'll get there in the end. When I had the kitchen patio doors put in, it was evident that there was a lot of water coming in the wall cavity, so that water's obviously been coming in for years and years, and putting that hole in the kitchen wall just revealed the problem. So I've been trying to find out how the water is getting into the kitchen. So in order to do that, I dismantled this wall. You can see here, I took all these bricks out, and I couldn't be bothered to build the whole wall back, so I put a couple of car tyres in there and just bricked round them, thus adding this feature in my side patio. So what you can see through that window is the Welsh Assembly government offices, which deal with European funding and healthcare inspection, I think. So let me just position the camera so you can see it. So there we have it, through the round window, the Welsh Assembly offices. God knows what they're doing there all day. Let's come on to food now. As I showed in the film, I've started growing some food, but this really is a tiny portion of what would be required for one person. I've seen estimates that an acre of land is required for providing the food for one person. An acre of land is the size of half a football pitch. Although I haven't produced much of my own food, I have created a food bank. I currently have about 1 year's supply of food in storage. Food should be stored in a dry place. I found a few large spaces in the house and fitted them with shelves. Beds sometimes have large cavities inside that are useful for storing food. You can find information online about the best foods that can be stored for long periods. Here is a spreadsheet I drew up which gives a suggested food bank content that could feed a person for up to a year. Creating a food bank is not self-sufficiency, however. If the price or supply of food was to become unstable, a food bank is ideal for supplying shortfalls in the short and medium term. Another potential source of food that I've considered is wild fish. I researched this subject with a very simple question in mind, which was this: how easy is it to catch fish free of charge in the UK, take them home and eat them, or freeze them and then eat them? I didn't realise that such a simple question was fraught with so many complications, regulations and laws. I gave up after a while, concluding that it is essentially illegal for various reasons. If anyone can give me a simple, straight answer to this question or a way of getting round it, I'd be very grateful. I could also mention rabbits and other wild animals. Anyone with any ideas, please let me know. Good morning. Now here's something we still have in Wales that you might not have in England. Let's come on to clothes now. The only thing I'm going to say about this is that if you're prepared to buy second-hand clothes, which I've been doing for over 10 years now, you can get half-decent stuff for peanuts from car boot sales and charity shops. Car boot sales are a very good idea if you want to perhaps swap items without any money changing hands. Now, communications, as I said earlier, really is a luxury. It's not an essential need. This is a highly complex area that has been covered in many previous Rich Planet episodes. Communication with the system is non-essential, especially if you are already providing all of the above yourself. It's unhealthy to watch television, so why not save yourself the trouble of buying a license and throw the TV out or sell it? Is the internet and a mobile phone essential? They are not essential for you, but they are essential if the system is going to keep control of you. The system needs communication with you more than you need it from the system. However, do think about making communication with like-minded people, which does not pass through the system. Why do you think pubs are still not back to normal? Communication with you from the system is often toxic and controlling and is organised by criminals. What about employment? Do you need employment from the system? Well, the great thing about self-sufficiency is that if you can provide all of the above to yourself, then you'll need very little money and therefore very little employment. Similarly, you will not need to give your labour to the system. You can sit in the sun and wait for your vegetables to grow. And we come on to money. Again, this has been covered in previous shows. In particular, look at show number 287, Money That Spends Itself. The main purpose of money is as a means of exchange. It allows you to exchange what you don't need with things that you do. It is also a store of value. If a community of like-minded people is going to turn away from the system, they will still need a means of exchange and a useful store of value. Rather than passing money back and forward from the system, they will trade with each other using their own currencies that are not part of the system. This is something I've been thinking about a lot recently. How are people going to trade with each other outside of the criminal central banking cartel that is planning to make its own smart money compulsory for every person on the planet. Will cryptocurrency provide the answer? I'm not sure that's the answer, because you ultimately need the internet to be able to do that, which is owned by the system. I have come up with a solution to this age-old problem, a new currency which has intrinsic value, it is durable and sought after. It's the Frebentos Pi coin. All right. Each Frebentos Pi would be a unit of currency with a current sterling exchange rate of £2 per pi. You would need quite a large wallet, so this is the wallet, the Frebentos Pi wallet. You could use tins of tuna would be £1.50 coins, or worth £1.50. I'm only half joking about this, because if food could be compressed somehow into small manageable units, it would be the ideal alternative currency. Food for thought. Now, the problem about the money that the system is going to try and provide you with in the future is that it's going to completely change in its nature. This is what people haven't been told yet. Smart money is very bad news. CBDC is very bad news. The central banks will be controlling fiscal policy, because fiscal policy will be inside or part of the money itself. When they say smart money, they mean smart in the eyes of their system. They don't really mean smart. When they say that prices and markets will be determined by artificial intelligence, they don't mean real intelligence. They mean intelligence in the eyes of their system. You see, their system believes that the COVID scam is a real pandemic. Their system believes global warming and climate change are a real threat. Their system believes governments aren't capable of terrorism. Their system believes you are a minion and needs to be controlled by making you dependent on everything their system provides. Now, there are still a few more things I need to add to this list. The first is injections. The system is giving most of its dependents injections. They are not vaccinations, they are injections. Are you enjoying them? They're going to go on for some time. Another thing to look forward to in the future is social credits, a system of control which is a social engineer's dream. If you don't know what they are or aren't bothered about them, you need to go and jump off a large building. And don't forget about the global digital ID system, a system that will digitally identify you, record everything you do, track everywhere you go, and clamp down on you if you overstep any of the system's arbitrary parameters. If you continue to have your needs met by the system, you will be forced to take employment, or indeed forced to receive social engineering in the form of counselling, education and advice, which will be administered increasingly in an online realm where your interaction with their system is via a smartphone or a computer. See Alison McDowell's work on this. These devices are stepping stones to you being directly connected to their system via a brain interface. In order to get you hooked up to their system, which is run by criminals, they need you to receive all the needs that the system provides. They don't want you providing yourself with your own needs. And they don't want people providing needs to each other without going via their system. Their CBDC, smart money, universal basic income system. Global communism. They will tell you they are trying to save the planet. They will tell you they are trying to save humanity. These are the lies of criminals who are interested in one thing, which is complete control of the human race. Now, if you think I'm a bit of a nutter for doing all this, I just want you to bear in mind, I have no mortgage or rent. I have no debt or loans. I have no electric bill. I do not pay for a TV license. I do not pay for Sky or any other propaganda. I do not pay for home or buildings insurance. My gas bill is small because my free electric heats my water and I can heat part of my property using wood from a log burner. I have a year's supply of food and I am growing my own food. The only nutters are those who are increasing their dependence on a system run by criminals, not those who are freeing themselves from it. Now that I've taken steps to free myself, hopefully I will have more free time to carry out further Rich Planet investigations into the crimes of our media, the crimes of our government, and the crimes of the globalists who are running the scamdemic. Protect yourself and free yourself from the draconian system that is being built around you right now. Believe none of what you hear and only half of what you see. I'm Richard D. Hall. Good night.